You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in beautiful Northport, Florida. I have been out on the roads today, and I would have to say that the traffic has lessened a little bit, but let's all take our time getting home tonight. Make sure everybody's safe. We do not need anybody in trauma or any family members in trauma. So let's just chill out on the roads a little bit, and enjoy ourselves, and get home safe, and have a good Monday night. So I've got really special guests in the house today. We're talking about a couple different things that are out there, and I hope that you guys will give some feedback and some questions that you may have along the way. But Janet, I want you to go ahead and start with yourself and introduce who you are and what position you hold.
Okay, so my name is Janet Carrillo. I've been with the city going on almost 8 years in September. And my title is Social Services Manager. So I oversee the Social Services Division for the city of Northport. I also administer the Family Services Center as well as the Community Education Center.
So in saying all those things that are layered together, what is it that you do to coordinate all those things, and why is it so important for the city to have that position filled?
Oh, well, I really like to say, and I'm really proud to say that my staff and I are like a resource hub. So the Family Services Center was opened back in 2008 to be just that. That way residents would be able to come in and apply for financial assistance, whether it be external or internal. In Northport, instead of having to drive or commute outside of the city, because that's how it was prior to the Family Services Center. So we provide financial assistance to City of Northport residents. And that's in the form of utilities, mortgage, rental assistance. We also partner with a lot of agencies, nonprofits, and other government agencies in connecting the clients that need the financial assistance to those agencies, sort of like a pass-through agency. We're also approved to fill out the financial applications for that agency for the clients, if that makes sense. We also host major community events throughout the year, and just we really pride ourselves in being a resource hub. We get all kinds of calls on the daily, if not the weekly, of just random things that people need assistance with, and we pride ourselves in making sure that we try to identify the answer for them.
So we had our hurricane preparedness, and a lot of our nonprofit organizations are really great partners pre and post hurricane event, and we learned that through some of the interviews that I did on Saturday at the event. But with all that being said, those are the partners that you're dealing with amongst others that are out there too, right?
Yes. During, man, I think about Hurricane Ian, and then it was like, I don't know, for 6 months who we were and what we did. And Alaina's probably knows exactly what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
but it's like a blur. And my staff and I, it's a running joke in the office, and we're like, we don't know who we were in those 6 months past, post Hurricane Ian. But yeah, we definitely partnered with several nonprofits in the area. Specifically like United Way, we were able to assist them with the distribution of vouchers. We ended up, I think it ended up being like 300 vouchers totaling $75,000 that was direct to Northport residents that experienced any Hurricane Ian related damages. We also were very close knit with Awaken Church next door through the food pantry, as well as All Faiths Food Bank. So we definitely need to have those strong relationships and relationships and partnerships with our area nonprofits, because it takes a village. It can't just be done with one of us. It takes all of us to do it.
Well, and I'm gonna bring in some of the village as far as the city workers now, and Alaina Ray, and I'll let you introduce yourself. Now I have you connected via phone, so everybody out there in listening land, I've got her mic'd in here the best I can. But if Alaina, you'll speak up, that'll be great.
Sure, John, thank you. And yeah, technical difficulties are great, aren't they?
Absolutely.
So I'm Alaina Ray, and I'm the Director of Development Services. And what that means is that I am over planning and zoning, building permits and inspections, code enforcement, and just recently we implemented a new natural resources division. And within the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks, I am now the proud owner of the economic development division. So,
Gee, you just needed one more layer, didn't you?
well, I apparently I didn't have enough to do. So the city manager felt like that economic development needed a home, and that my house was the best place for him.
So I'm going to go back to, I think it was about a week ago that you were part of the Northport Forward. I want to say uplifting moments of the whole evening, because your professionalism into that whole presentation, you got a lot of accolades from Mr. Jerome Fletcher himself, but you also got a lot of accolades from the citizens because of your knowledge of what's happening and how those pieces interlock together and how they do affect everyday working class citizens who may not get to hear directly from you sometimes, but the complication of communication gets even more simplified when you can explain it on how it really addresses their daily lives. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of what you bring with your education and how you want to communicate this out to the citizens?
Sure, absolutely. Zoning and development issues are really complicated stuff. It's deep. It connects to a lot of different things, and there are numerous layers in regulations, policy, finances, a lot of things that are connect. And the more that we can do to break those issues down and communicate them in ways that are understandable to people who don't live and breathe that language every day. And I remember one of the things in that Northport Forward meeting the other night is that I said something and I used an acronym. We can speak for days in acronyms in this world, and we have to be able to break down these subjects in ways that are clear and easy to understand. And that's something that I've always really taken a lot of time to try to do. There are topics, if you take computers, don't ask me to figure out a computer. And if I get on the line with a customer service person trying to explain, how to do something with a computer, I'm completely lost.
Right.
So, that's kind of the way I approach it. Is I want to explain it to people in a way that I would want it explained to me if I didn't know anything about zoning. So the more we can do and get out there and talk with people about that. I've been a planner for a long time. I'm a certified planner. My background, my education is environmental planning. So I have a very strong love of our environment. And when people say that Northport doesn't care about the environment, it hurts, because I really do. I've worked on amazing environmental projects in the past, and I hope to continue to bring some of that to Northport. We have a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do, but I think we're doing great things. And the more that we can communicate what we're trying to accomplish and help people to understand that we pretty much all have the same goals for Northport as far, as making this a great place to live. And we're working on ways to communicate that.
We've got the social side of it now with our social department, and we've got you that you're like, let's say I consider myself multitasking beyond belief sometimes, and I hate to say this to you, but you one up to me. You've got so many multitasking things going on, but the beauty that you have that I don't is that you have a lot of really good managers within your department now. Being the department head, can you talk about the relationships that you have with your staff and the departments there, and how they really help kind of pave the way of the direction of some of these processes.
Absolutely. As director, ultimately I'm responsible for everything that happens in my department, but I certainly can't do everything by myself. And I need good people working in the department who can take a lot of the strategic ideas and we can run with them. And I've got a manager over each of the divisions. I also have an assistant director, Miss Lori Barnes, who has spoken at a lot of things and is in front of the commission a lot. And she's phenomenal. She's got an enormous amount of experience. Her experience really, it matches mine. We complement each other a lot. My division managers are very experienced. We've pilfered and poached from Sarasota County and Charlotte County.
Well, we've had that happen to us too, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, and so when I first got here, I had a lot of people who were stolen from other jurisdictions by other jurisdictions near us, and now turnabout's fair play. So I'm taking some of those people from them, and we've got some people who are very passionate. Our new natural resources division manager, Stefan Caleb, he was an environmental specialist in Sarasota County and brings a lot of not only great experience and knowledge and education, but he brings connections from Sarasota County that we can utilize. He just talked last week about their environmental lands program and how we can make better use of that and in preserving some lands. And he's working on identifying areas around the city that we can target for conservation. So, he brings a lot of that. Our economic development team, we have a very, very small team right now. We're working to build that out. I've got some work to do there, but we have a program in place that we're going to implement, and we are aggressively targeting the businesses, the type of businesses that our residents want to see. Our planning and zoning manager, Hank Flores, he has been a planner in Florida for decades, has a lot of experience. He's worked in cities that have a lot of challenges, and they've overcome those. And he's relatively new to the city as well. And then our chief building official, David Greenbaum, he has been a building official in other places. I will tell you that I used to be the director of planning, zoning, and building for Longboat Key, and he was my building official there. So when he heard that we had an opening here, he applied because he knew that I was someone he wanted to work for. I think we're building a great team. We still have some very key positions that need to be filled. Our planning division is continuously challenged. Our workload is unbelievably high in that division. And we have some crucial positions that we need to fill there, and we've been trying. But being a planner in Southwest Florida is one of those positions where we all need planners, and there's just not enough of them out there.
Right.
But we've got some great team members that are on board with Northport now, and we are so excited about utilizing their experience.
So I'm gonna throw a question at you from Chuck English that I want you to think about for a few minutes, and I'm gonna throw you two. He wants to know your perspective as it relates to the extension of a road at Spring Haven impacting their critical environmental corridor. And then the second side of that is you also had a presentation today that a lot of people may or may not know what happened, but I was starting to watch some of it. And unfortunately, I had to work, so I got to watch it, the remainder of it later. I want you to talk about the signs and how that relates to the ULDC and what's going on there, so you can give some clarification on those. But I'm going to slide back to Janet real quick and talk about the connections that you have with the social side of things now. And let's say that we were to never again to have a hurricane, but let's say we did. I got some information from Elaine Emmerich because she's part of these nonprofit organizations, and they're really trying to rally for good or better outcomes because of Ian. They're looking to utilize their services to impact the citizens in need post hurricane. Is that how you help coordinate things too? Do you work with them on things like that?
Yes, we definitely work with them on streamlining. I think one of the issues or one of the community gaps that we identified at post Hurricane Ian was just the streamlined efforts of everyone. So, everybody was being called literally for the same thing. So we are trying to build something that's more efficient with a process of where the person that's being impacted would call, and then that main agency try to identify how to streamline them down. So they're not literally going to every single agency with the same problem and being either served in one capacity or the other, versus all of us being on the same platform serving the same client. Does that make sense? Like, instead of that person going to everybody, it's going to go to one agency that's going to streamline that process. And we, it's taken a minute. Several of us have had conversations and discussions on how to just be more effective and have, the resources and the answers. I will be honest, when Hurricane Ian happened, earlier I said that we pride ourselves on like being a good resource hub and just like having the connections or being a good liaison. Well, we found ourselves not having all the answers with Hurricane Ian because people were calling and saying, "Hey, FEMA denied me. I have a claim. I'm working with the insurance." And guess what? We were in the same boat as our residents. All of my staff was in the same boat. Some of us didn't have roofs. Some of us, had water damage. Others couldn't stay in their home. So we were in the same exact boat. And if anything, I now say, like, if anything that we've learned is just being more resilient than we already were, and two, now being able to navigate the resources a little bit better. Do we still have a ways to go? Absolutely. Yes, we are learning. We are learning, and we're trying to train better to just have better resources and easier accessible resources too.
That's outstanding, and you kind of gave a really great overview of exactly what she was explaining on Saturday. And the beauty is that when you have social services side in the office or in the city hall environment, working in conjunction with the social services outside and these social programs outside and the nonprofits, when you all are carrying the same message,
right,
it's fantastic because nobody's double talking themselves. You're all in agreement and you're all focused on end goals. Which is really making things much easier for the citizens.
Right. That is correct.
So I'm going to slide back to Alaina real quick. And I'm, we're jockeying two different platforms today. We're doing some social sides of things, but we also have Alaina on. And trust me, I think both of them could carry the show all by themselves. But I have to be fair to both and go back and forth and make sure we get good airtime for both. But I asked you two questions prior to, one on the Springhaven corridor and then also the signage. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to handle both of those questions, Alaina.
Thanks, John. And those are really good questions. Thanks, Chuck. And I really appreciate Chuck's passion with the environment. He always has really good questions and points. But my perspective on Springhaven, I come at it with a couple of different things. One, from an environmental standpoint, what a critical area for wildlife. It is a junction where the wildlife that utilize the Mayacachi Creek and Little Salt Springs are able to migrate back and forth. And whatever we do, we need to make sure that we don't lose that connection. Something like a ground level road with with no adjustments for wildlife simply won't work. Ideally, it'd be great if there's no road there, because it is such a critical wildlife area. A lot of those properties back there are private properties. It'd be fantastic if we could find funding to purchase all of those properties and put it into conservation so that we can maintain that full wildlife corridor in perpetuity. It is sort of a bottleneck there because development has encroached, and it sort of, comes down to a point and then opens back up to the Myakkahatchee. So there are a lot of different wildlife that use it, and that has to be a critical factor in whatever happens with that location. If those lands back there stay privately owned, problem is that at some point they're going to want to develop. And if we don't come up with a plan for the road, then legally we will have to allow them to build a road, and they'll build it to minimum standards, which isn't beneficial to our wildlife. So if a road has to go there, then it is going to be crucial that we look at different types of wildlife crossings. And I've worked on several. I was a project manager for Everglades restoration, so I worked on wildlife crossings in the Everglades, and I worked on wildlife crossings in Lee County for panthers and bears. Some of them work and some of them don't. It all depends on the type of species that you have that need to use it. So it's going to be very important that we take a close look at the type of species that need to get through there and what we can do to facilitate that. The last thing I ever want to see is our precious wildlife in the street. That just is something that my heart has never been able to handle that. When I worked in Lee County, we lost a panther. I'm 75 and I've never gotten over that. So the last thing I want to see is our wildlife, facing those types of things on a street. So we're going to have to take a very close look at it. And I can tell you that right before this meeting, I had my natural resources manager in my office, and he and I were talking about this very subject. So it is high on our list, and it is in our thoughts daily. Signs.
I know that you're ready for this one.
Gosh, I just love the topic of signs. The ULDC, of course, we're rewriting the ULDC, and we've been working with outside legal consultants because our city attorney wanted us to go to the experts on this. There's so much litigation around signage and regulation of signs that they really wanted to make sure that we had access to the experts on this topic. So we have been working with an outside legal team that they go all over the country working on sign codes and giving lectures on sign codes. They're very good at it, but
I can't hear her.
every time they've made a ruling, they have continued to strip away the ability for governments to regulate signage. Freedom of speech. I mean, we're talking First Amendment rights here, and there's nothing more precious to us as Americans than freedom of speech. So we have to make sure that in the regulations that we propose, we're not infringing upon that freedom of speech. And the Supreme Court has made it abundantly clear that we are very limited in what we can do. We can regulate the size of signs. We can regulate where they're placed. We can regulate how long they're placed for. And we can regulate the height. We cannot regulate what a sign says. And we cannot discriminate against different individuals or different groups. So it puts a lot of parameters around us and a box around us as to what we can do. And it's a tough, signs is a tough nut to crack. We can't do everything that people want us to do, and we have to be very careful to not infringe upon those rights that we all as Americans, they are our dearest rights.
So I want to streamline a few questions, because I think in the sign, as far as like the business structures, I think that's out of a lot of everyday citizens' realm. We drive away 80%, 90% of us drive away to go to work every day. So signage to us, let's just start with one of the proudest industries that I know of, which is realtors, because I am one. But let's talk about the realtor signs a little bit, because where I lost you earlier today, unfortunately, was where you were just getting into the realtor signs in the yards. Well, those already kind of have their own style, and you're not talking about those signs and regulating them out of the city, correct?
No, and really everybody who owns property in the city should be able to have signage expressing themselves. If somebody wants to put a sign in their front yard that says they're proud of their kid at Northport High School,
you were talking about that, yeah.
Or they support a candidate or don't support a candidate, or or they just want to say, have a nice day. They should be entitled to do that. And the Supreme Court has said that they should have, we should make accommodations for them to do that. The problems that we have primarily are signage in the city rights of way.
Yep, street corners.
Where, you come up to an intersection and there's 50 signs there that say, we buy ugly houses, or we can put your fence up, or we want to buy your old car. It's those kinds, and really, if there's one there, not really a big deal. Nobody really cares. It's when there's a bunch there that we get calls about, they can't see cars coming around the corner, or kids crossing the street to the bus stop are being blocked from view, or things like that. So those are the signs we're really that are most concerning for the city.
So I'm going to kind of identify signage, and then you tell me how it's going to affect the everyday citizen. So we'll kind of we'll use that as an example. Let's go with the forever favorite. I'm having a yard sale.
Right.
So
in your own yard, absolutely. And really, some of these are policy decisions. As far as yard sale signs on the corner or intersection at Price and Salford, or where, if it's in the city right of way, the city has to decide whether it's going to allow any signs in the right of way or no signs in the right of way. And when I say no signs, I'm not talking about government, stop signs and yield signs and those kinds of things, but I'm talking about the signs that people go out on the weekend and stick in the ground. So they have to decide whether they're going to allow anybody to put up a sign that says anything on whatever corner or along the street that they want to, or whether they're not going to allow anyone to.
And that would,
it's not a pick or choose.
All right. So that would be including, and I'm just going to layer this here a little bit. That would be including open house signs. That would be including re-election signs. because those are signs, and so you can't discriminate on those either, correct?
Correct. The city cannot decide that one person or one entity or somebody with a specific message can put up a sign and someone else can't. So for every garage sale sign that the city can say, oh yeah, we don't mind the garage sale sign, we don't mind the candidate sign, we don't mind the open house sign. They also have to allow the sign that says, come to our KKK rally, or
Which is that, yeah, that's true. It's part of the discrimination lawsuit, right?
right. Or I hate my neighbor, or calling somebody out by name and putting it on a sign and saying what you think about that person.
Well,
that's unfortunate. We can't discriminate against that.
And furthermore, let's go back to the nonprofit organizations, because there is a battle here too with signage and nonprofit organizations, because the nonprofit organizations, a lot of them run a lot of special events to, one, bring awareness. We'll talk about the pets, different things like that are out there, and they're also making a decision whether these nonprofits that we are partnering with would have the right to have those signs out there too.
Right, because if we allow nonprofit, we can't allow it exclusively for nonprofits. We can't allow it exclusively for certain types of nonprofits. If you allow it for any nonprofit, you have to allow it for everyone. Just because someone isn't a nonprofit, you can't discriminate against them. Well, so it's a tough one.
Well, no, I'm going to layer this a little bit too, because I think you could take the environment and signage and say that you have two of the most difficult things to discuss in open forum at any given time. Chuck had said, the battle for signs. Well, the battle for the environment has been around for a while, and I think the drums are pounding right now for both of them a little louder because of the population that we have, and we also have seen that the growth is not, and contrary to everybody's belief. Let's put all the stakes in the ground we can, but we're not going to slow down the growth. As long as the economy is booming, we're going to have a big city. We're not going to stay small. We're the biggest city in the county right now, and we have been known to not act it for a long time, but now we are acting. We have our big boy pants or big girl pants pulled up, and we are acting like that city now that we've always wanted it to be. And so we're going through some growing pains, not only on the environmental side, where it's a legitimate conversation, and that, and you've worked on some of these major projects, but the signage is another part of it. Location of police department is another one. Why it has to be certain places, the involvement of social services along those lines. I mean, you take our city as a whole, and I don't know that you can't pull our city staff into pieces with these multiple conversations, but yet at the same time, the strength of the staff right now with the amount of, I think he put up 98 years experience or something like that on the slide the other day. When you take into consideration the amount of staff and the amount of experience that we have, we're not approaching these things as rookies anymore. Can you kind of talk about I know you've talked about the signs and those things, but talk about the experience that you have with staff and as it relates to citizens about being multifaceted and being able to look at all of these tasks and divide them down and give them all the special care that they need.
I think that one of the things that I found when I first came here, and I've been here for 2 years and 5 months. So going on 2.5 years. It seemed like many of the departments didn't talk to each other, and directors didn't talk to each other. And we have been changing that. That is something that is critical, because as this city grows, as my department approves more development, it's going to impact Janet's division. It's going to impact utilities and public works and our fire and police. And if we're not talking with each other, then we don't know what we need to plan for the future. So I know that the leadership of this city has made great strides in ensuring that we all talk to each other and that we have the right people in the room to have these discussions and make the decisions that need to be made. And that's a change. That's a fundamental shift in how this city has operated in the past. I've lived in Sarasota County off and on for 20 years. Northport, is a city that I've watched for many years, and it hasn't always been that way. When we bring new people in, we're looking for the people who've been through some of the things that we know Northport is dealing with or will deal with in the coming years, because those types of experiences bring more to the table, and we can sit down and we can say, okay, here's what worked in another city that was dealing with the same situation, because we're not reinventing the wheel, and we are not the first community that has dealt with these issues. And we need to look out there and not only see what has worked in other cities and counties, but what hasn't worked, because we don't want to repeat mistakes that other places have made. And by bringing that experience, I think it allows us to go out to our residents and have discussions with them in a way that it makes it apparent that we know what we're talking about. We've been through this. We have a lot of experience that we're bringing to the table. And we don't say any of that to boast at all. But what we do want to stress is that we're not novices and we're not rookies. We do have a lot of on the ground experience that we want to bring to these issues so that we can work with the residents, not against them. We definitely don't want to do that. We want to work with our residents, with our businesses to find these solutions. Not everybody's going to be happy all the time. As a planning director, I say if I'm not making one half of the population unhappy at any given time, I'm making the other half unhappy. So that's sort of the way it is.
I think we're all finding out our country is divided in half, even on a national level, let alone the city side of things. But there's two questions out there that I know that Chuck is still lingering out there on his side of things, on clarification on the Springhaven. But I want to get to a couple other guests or a couple other comments. One, Sean Kirkpatrick actually runs a home health agency, and he wants to know from Janet if there is a interest in getting with them, because they've done some post-Hurricane Ian type thing. He is with a profit organization, but they're trying to give some assistance post-hurricane. I'm not sure exactly, and I know Sean personally, but I don't know exactly what his plan was. But would you be interested in at least talking with him and finding what his
Absolutely. Yeah, he can contact me and we can have a discussion and see, what we can assist with, or if we need to help them connect with the residents directly. I'm always willing to help and assist if the resident is going to get some type of service or resource. Absolutely.
And then the other question he had was more towards Alaina, I believe. Now, we did pick up some information on this the other day, because the hospital has the ability to build up. So they're able to do some things in a flood zone. There are different things like that. But SMH will have 212 beds on 65 acres, and they're going to go bigger than that, by the way. I did catch that the other day. from the hospital, and that's not going to be a slow played role either. That's going to be a massive another addition up in Venice. We're slated to have 100 beds on 32 acres, so half the size of acreage. We are going to have 2 hospitals, though. We're going to have one in the Welland Park Northport, which is our corridor in Northport, Welland Park, and then we're also going to have one on Sumter. Neither one of those 2 hospitals are slated to be as big as the hospital at Venice, but they are going to have the needs taken care of for the citizens. But we're going to have 2 locations, which is going to be very impactful for us. But can you talk about how you guys are working with zoning and the zoning side of it, the permitting side of it, how the city is working with the hospital to look at how the future is going to look for those hospitals in the future?
Absolutely. We've been with Sarasota Memorial Hospital representatives for probably close to a year or right at a year to make sure that when they're ready, we can hit the ground running. And we've already had pre-meetings with them. We are excited. We've looked at all of our schedules for how long it takes a development to go through, and we're committing to cutting that time off. It's going to take a lot of concentrated effort on our part to do that, but we understand the critical need that this community has for those hospitals. The hospital at Sumter, yes, 32 acres. It's on a site that is about half of the size of Venice, but they're going to be going up in height more than what the Venice campus is. So it will have the same, or it will have comparable intensity as far as the types of services that are provided. But it will be a taller building. And packed in a little tighter. The one at Welland, we don't know the programming yet, but that will be another facility. And then we also have HCA that is building in Welland. So we're going to have 3 major medical facilities, plus the Arcadia Behavioral Health Hospital that's currently under construction. So we have a lot of medical facilities that are coming to this community, incredibly needed, has been needed for a long time. But they are, I know SMH is planning to break ground next year. They're already working towards getting their plans together. HCA is breaking ground next month.
And so how are we addressing the Activity 3 center as far as the flooding is concerned? And Chuck brings up a good point. You know, it's a 200-year flood event. Keep in mind that that's roads and secondary. But here's the thing: when you're talking about the 4 corners at Sumter, and can you reaffirm with the citizens why it's essential to continue to build? You gave a great explanation the other night, and I wish more people could have heard it, but I'm gonna let you do it again on how that affects the flooding, how that affects movement of water, how that helps the citizens.
Yes. So I think the question last week centered primarily around the Lady Slipper area, but it really is that whole area.
It is.
We know how badly that area flooded during Ian, and Ian was a storm that we hope we never have repeated. But that a lot of that area, especially on the west side of Sumter, is in a flood zone, and part of the property that SMH is on is also in a flood zone. They will be mitigating that by not only building up, but also any new development has to retain their water on site. So in a lot of cases, new development can actually improve the surrounding area depending on how it's built. It's interesting that you mentioned Activity Center 3, because on May 6th, we do have a an item going to the commission to talk about a master plan for Activity Center 3. We've been working on it for several months. We got a grant from the state to help us do that project. And we're going to be talking about some different scenarios in that area. But that area is one that on the west side of Sumter, there's only about 15% of the lots have been developed as single family homes. There's still about 400, almost 400, 350, 450, excuse me, my brain is gone today for a Monday already, but
got to reboot.
There are several hundred lots that are undeveloped. The way these pre-platted lots are, you don't have to plan for your stormwater. All you have to do is send it to the street. And that's how the streets were designed, for the streets to flood, the houses to be built up a little bit. The more of those single family homes that you put in there, the more flooding you're going to put into the street and cut everybody off during a storm. If you take that area as a whole and you look at changing the zoning on it so that it encourages people to come in and buy up a lot of lots. If a new development wants to come in, other than a single family home, they have to run utilities back there. They would have to build a stormwater system to retain all of their water on site and prevent that water from doing what it does now, which is running to the path of least resistance and into the streets. So you would ultimately end up improving the stormwater situation, but we could also look at expanding the conservation areas along the Myakkahatchee to improve the stormwater runoff that goes to the Myakkahatchee as well. So one of the things that we're looking at with this master plan is how can we expand those environmental areas and benefit all of the residents to the south from a stormwater perspective.
And so what you're really essentially doing is through the growth that we're destined to have, restructuring how and where, but also kind of redefining how to mitigate. And you know, Chuck brings a good little comment in there. You're kind of remitigating the flood path that we have currently, and we know we have that, but then you're sliding that into and out of the residents, which we would have to probably raise taxes to do different things and come up with funding and change all those things. And we have only about 75 other projects to worry about at this point. But if you added that one in without incorporating the commercial side of it, it would be astronomical to do these things.
Yes, it would. So, you know, right now, and a lot of people don't know this, a lot of people hear the 250,000 population number that's been out there. Right now, if we allowed every lot that could be built for single family to be built with a single family house, our comprehensive plan for the last 10 years has said we'd have a population of 270,000 people with no stormwater mitigation, no utilities. We'd have well and septic out there. We know the state's not going to allow us to build another 40,000 septic systems.
Right.
They're just not going to let us. That's going to come to a stop. But the city doesn't have the money or the borrowing authority to run utilities to all of our neighborhoods and all of the areas to the east. By reimagining the growth and changing some of those single family areas to that, most of the single family areas aren't developed right now. There might be one home in an entire area and 400 lots, empty lots around them. By changing those now, when there's not much there, we put that burden onto new developers coming in. Because in order to develop any commercial or any multifamily, they're going to have to run power, they're going to have to run water and sewer, and they're going to have to do stormwater mitigation. So it really is putting that burden that as residents and taxpayers, we would have to pay for eventually.
Right.
And it's putting it on the developers coming in to make them pay for it.
So we've got about 2.5 minutes left before I have to get off the air. And Janet, I am going to dedicate another show with you, but what I would like in for you to get together and put together is some of the nonprofit organizations to come on with you.
Sure.
And we can show those strong partnerships, and we can start talking about some of the things that if we do have another hurricane, what some of the things that you have helped with the other nonprofit organizations streamline and help with assistance. And Alaina, I you're always welcome on my show at any moment, drop of a hat. I love having you part of it. You've got your hands full with all these things, but if people wanted to get a hold of you both, Janet, can you give your contact information, your email, so people can get a hold of you and have any questions discussed? Go ahead.
Sure. It's J Carrillo at northportfl.gov, and Carrillo is spelled Carrillo. There's 2 R's, 2 L's, because everybody always gets it wrong. They either just put 1 R or 1 L.
And I most definitely wish I could roll my tongue like that, but I cannot.
Everybody says that. Everybody says that, and I'm like, it's okay. Just say Carrillo. I'm used to it.
Well, that's how I'm going to say it, because there's no chance of me rolling my tongue. But Alaina, can you give your contact information, please?
Sure. So my email is ARA.
It's Monday, Alaina.
I have obviously talked too much today. ARAY@northportfl.gov, and my number is on the screen. That's my direct desk number. It is 941-429-7098. I will warn everybody that it will probably go to voicemail.
Yep.
Because I do work about 50 to 55 hours a week, but probably 35 of those hours are spent in meetings. So if I can't call you back, I will get someone on my team who could probably give you a better answer to call you back.
Awesome. I'm going to exit off of the radio station real quick. Everyone listening in on WKDW Radio 97.5, you can always check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. All my shows are there. Real Talk 97.5 FM. You can go in, you can ask questions, you can leave comments. I love all the comments. I know that we were exploding with a lot of guests on social media today, and I appreciate them too. So thank you very much. You guys have a good week, and we'll talk to you on Monday. This is John Rawlings with the remainder of the 30 seconds of the show here on social media. One, I want to thank you both for being part of the show and being part of the Q&A side of it. We're going to build this into something really powerful, and we are doing that at the station right now. I appreciate you being candid about everything. The beauty is these questions can be asked directly of both of you at any given time, because you're really trying to get more information out to the everyday citizen. So I appreciate you guys really, one, being part of our city, but two, Alaina, I truly enjoyed your presentation the other night, and Mr. Fletcher is correct. You should be sitting on the dais and answering these questions point blank. I know you don't want to, but that was a lot of respect shown. But you should be given the respect. I do want to talk to you about the signs more, just so we can maybe give some good clarification on exactly what's going to go down, because I think that's going to affect a lot of our citizens, not only every day, but I think it's going to affect a lot of the nonprofit organizations in our community, and I know there's good solutions out there, and I know that we're trying to think of every one of them. So I would love to get your insight more on that, and in the near future. So I
Yeah, and
go ahead.
we're going to be talking with our outside counsel on different solutions and different things that came up today, so that we can vet those through a legal channel to make sure that we don't. Last thing we want to do is lead our commission down a path that is almost guaranteed to create a lawsuit. And if we have to go to court, we have to go to court. We'll do it. We'll come up with arguments all day long. But if it's something that is highly likely for us to lose, we'd like to know that going into it.
Right. So you're not trying to create the lawsuits. You're trying to eliminate them by what people have done in the past, but you also don't want to limit the citizens or the business structure side of things. I'm going to throw something at you that, as far as like a real estate agent is concerned, if we do go to something that's restrictive or needed insight, I think that any agent that puts open house signs out, first off, I run my events very clean, like I was taught. You day of or hour before, you're setting your signs up. When it's over for the next hour, you're picking them up. It's not you're leaving them up for 3 days in a row or a week at a time, because you might be doing an hour open house somewhere. So I'm not a fan of littering our city with signs, but I'm also a fan of informing people that hey, here's, as a realtor, here's what our expectations are of you, and really having like an annual sign off of, hey, that their signs up, but we can validate he was here and or she was here, and they know the regulation.
I frequently tell people in the public, and I tell our commission quite frequently, my code enforcement officers don't work on the weekend.
Yeah, and that was a quiet suggestion.
If your sign is still there on Monday morning, it's likely to be removed.
Yes. Which listen, at the same time, there's usually no open houses on Monday.
Right.
I can usually say that with pretty much a 99% chance of it happening. So I just
99%, yeah.
Yeah.
99% of the flag sales and open houses are on Saturday and Sunday.
they are.
If the sign's still there on Monday, they probably aren't going to pick it up.
Well, I love the fact that we're having this conversation, because it does directly affect it. But I hope we come up with some sort of a, hey, I got a permit, and everybody knows about it, and that's why. I think if we could streamline it that way somehow, it would be awesome. Because I think that you're not cluttering the corners anymore. You're like you said, Monday morning, you can show up there and pretty much eliminate all the ones that don't have a permit. So
And yeah, and the less we can have to issue permits, the better, because it takes the city out of having to pick and choose, or the potential to pick and choose.
okay.
The more that we can make it just, it's certain things are allowed, period, and the city doesn't have to say yes to you or no to you or just yes to everybody. The more we can take that layer of bureaucracy out of it, the better. Because if we have to issue temporary sign permits to everybody who asks, we'll probably have to hire more staff, and nobody wants to do that.
So I'm gonna ask this, and if it's too long of a conversation, I know you've got things to do. What do you think the end game is going to be?
I think we're going to have to strike a balance. I think there's going to be compromises on both sides, or both sides of the issue. Not that there's us versus them or anything like that, but I think there will have to be compromises on both sides of the issue, and I don't think we will get everything we need on either side. I think we just have to be very careful. And I know our attorneys will say that too. This is a very litigious subject. And it almost always, these lawsuits almost always end with the government entity being wrong. And so we have to just acknowledge from the beginning that if we're sued, the deck is already stacked against us.
Kind of a hard way to play the game, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's a tough subject. That's why I said this is a tough nut to crack. It really is. Anytime these go before a court, you're under strict scrutiny with the court. The government is, not the individual. It's almost assuming that the government is infringing upon the rights, and we have to prove that we're not.
Is there a city out there that we're mimicking right now that already has it perfect?
So the draft ordinance that was presented today is an ordinance that is based off of other ordinances that have succeeded, and that it's based off of regulations that have arisen out of other court cases. So it's a conservative, I will say it's a conservative approach to really ensure that we have the best possible chance of not being sued and not losing a suit. Are there compromises? Yes. Are there things that we could be less conservative on and take a risk of being sued? Probably, but it's a risk. It's all a risk.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's any code that's bulletproof, because this is law that's still being made in the court system.
Tough way to approach a day.
Yeah.
So listen, I appreciate your time. And this proves a point, though, is that right on the air, you didn't know where I was going with this whole thing. You didn't know what the questions were going to be. Neither one of you did. This is how forthcoming the conversations are, not just here, Northport Forward, any of those things. Those questions are raw right from citizens, and you handle them. It would be the same thing if you were contacted at City Hall and your team does the same thing. So I'm trying to reiterate that while we all may not agree with everything that's happening, we can have dialogue, and there are listening ears there, and you're not trying to ramrod things through without discussion. So I just want it's kind of proven the point. I know I took an extra 10 minutes, but I wanted that point to be felt out there to the community. You're both obtainable. You're both ready for conversations, as is every single commissioner, the city managers, the assistant managers. All of them are really trying to communicate well. And there are great things to happen within our city walls, and we have got to count on the fact that we're not, and I love this line, we're not kicking the can down the road anymore. And we can't. If we would have done some of these things 20 or 30 years ago, these wouldn't be as hot buttons as they are today. And it's not because the people were not here yet. It was because these problems were not addressed in the manner that they should have been on the rezoning side of things back then. Price Boulevard probably would have looked different. I know that Lady Slipper, we're talking about how few of homes that are back there. There probably wouldn't have been any. It probably would have all been converted over. And those people who own those lands, as you said, you're trying not to set it up for loss of a profit margin for those companies, but with the transition, it actually opens up the wallet towards developers to come in and do things. And it also opens up the water flow and the water drainage. And, 20 years ago, we were having floods. And I know Chuck and many, many others who've watched this show know that. So it's nice. It is refreshing to see that we're not kicking the can down the road anymore, but we got some really hard decisions to make. And man, it's not easy.
They don't get easier with time.
No, they get tougher.
So just get harder.
Well, thank you both very much. I appreciate your time, and God bless you both. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, John. We'll see ya.
Thank you.